This trip was not my idea. Even though I had no objection to it, and was in fact excited about it, I clung to this little detail because, in my mind at least, it seemed to absolve me of all responsibility for whatever happened next. 2 years ago, when Haley and I traveled to Colombia, I'd felt personally responsible for her safety because the trip had been my idea. Now that the shoe was on the other foot, I settled comfortably into the role of unwitting dupe, happy in the knowledge that my last words, uttered to my girlfriend as I was being trampled in a food riot, would be, "This is all your fault." A lovely young girl was seated on a low bench next to a tray full of cups. A few coals were smoldering inside a small brazier, and she fanned the flames to life. After a few minutes, steam began to issue from the pot while her partner made small talk with our guide. Seeing animals in the wild always gives me hope. If there's going to be an end times, it will come when all the animals have been killed or imprisoned. There's a quote attributed to Chief Seattle from the mid-19th century. "What is man without the beasts? If all the beasts were gone, man would die from a great loneliness of spirit." We made a slow circuit of the ruins. The field was littered with stelae of all sizes, many of them long since toppled, but a few slender shafts still rose to vertiginous heights. We passed Adwa, site of the 1896 battle between Ethiopia and Italy, an encounter the Italians hoped would turn Ethiopia into a colonial property. However, the Italians were swept from the field, losing half their number as casualties and prisoners. Our driver made sure to point out the terrain where the battle took place. Parched and rugged, with eerie, hoodoo-like hills, it was the kind of place that would make any colonial soldier rethink his life choices as he lay dying in the sun. "You want a room?" he asked, but I wasn't really paying attention because I'd stopped in my tracks, confronted with the stunning vista before me. We were on the edge of an escarpment overlooking the Rift Valley, and I found myself staring down at the twin lakes of Chamo and Abaya as if I were still airborne. From north to south, all I could see was unbroken jungle. I found it hard to tear myself away from the view, which made our accommodations seem almost parenthetical. I liked the idea that Homo sapiens were an itinerant species. Our story was one of movement, out of Africa, across Asia, barely surviving the supervolcanic eruption of Toba 75,000 years ago, and eventually finding our way into the New World, out of Africa and back again. The circle now circled, to paraphrase Walt Whitman. Now we find ourselves uttering the words of another poet, Arthur Rimbaud, 19th century enfant terrible of French literature come gunrunner in Ethiopia. Rimbaud, who'd long ago given up on poetry, penned his most poignant line from Harar in a letter to his family in France. "What am I doing here?" It was the final, unanswerable question.